All my life been wondering why. Questions unanswered like what makes blue skies. I never did think to question reality in ways I judged were pure insanity. So today I just want to talk a little bit about who I am, how I got here, and why I'm doing what I'm doing. My name is Danny B. I was born in the ghetto, or one of the ghettos of British Columbia, Surrey. My dad is a nomadic hippie from Newfoundland, and my mom is a free-spirited gypsy from Uganda, which is in East Africa, right there. It was probably some kind of divine intervention that brought them together, and an even stronger will of God that's kept them together all of these days. But from that beautiful combo came little boy Danny B. Apparently as a child, my nickname was How Come? It didn't matter what it was about. I just wanted to know, how come? My curiosity hasn't killed me yet, so I must be a dog, not a cat. When I was a boy with model rocket toys pointed at the sun, always asking, how come? How come? I was really fortunate to have such adventurous parents. And I spent the better part of 8 years growing up overseas in Africa and India. I studied 3 different school systems, the American, the British, and the Canadian. And I even spent 2 years at a boarding school that was 500 kilometers from my parents until I was 16 years old when we came back to Canada. The life experiences that I gained from living in so many different cultures really opened up my mind, and it let me see the world through a different perspective that unfortunately is lacking to too many people in this part of the world. If there was one thing that I could tell people, it would be to get out and see the world. Don't be a tourist. Go be a human. Open your eyes. Open your mind. Anyways, so after all of that, I came back to Surrey. I rebelled pretty hard right out of the gates and ended up moving out of my parents' house a few months after landing in Canada. I was only 16 years old. I left with a backpack of clothes and my guitar. And it's not like I didn't have any options, because I did, but I just had to figure it out on my own. So I did. I spent a year growing up on the streets of Vancouver and Surrey, and it helped to shape me into the person that I am today. After a year of learning and growing, I got myself back into school, or otherwise known as indoctrination camp. I attempted to mend my relationship with my dad, and I moved back in with my family. I spent the next 2 years finishing off high school while I still continued partying hard and occasionally trying to figure out what it was all about. Life, the world, the universe. How come the seas always find the level? How come the rivers forever run downhill? How come the clouds float when I don't? I didn't travel too much at this point because honestly I just didn't have the money for it. I was spending most of my time and money on girls, smokes, and weed. Yeah, truth. I managed to finish high school with scholarships and honors and briefly contemplated going to university to get a degree in criminal psychology, but I didn't like the idea of another 10 years of very expensive schooling, so I took my technology scholarships and I got a diploma in computer science and software development. Bought a sports car, living life in the fast lane, and then the tech sector crashed after the Y2K scare, and all of a sudden people in my field were scrounging for scraps. After taking a major pay cut and working for a small tech startup, trying to market an encrypted file messaging application targeted for offshore and international bankers, all of a sudden 9/11 happened. So this is where the story starts to get a little interesting. How come I want to just turn the wheel and finally see what I secretly feel? Questions to answers in books full of pictures. Facts taught in lectures were proof, so I thought. I'll back up just a tiny bit so you can all get a point of reference. This is just a couple years after cell phones started to become popular. There was no Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, or any of that crap. This was the era of IRC chat rooms, bad websites, BBS boards, and yes, even dial-up modems. It was the evening before 9/11, and I was at a buddy's place watching WWE Monday Night Raw. It was something that we just did all the time. And his brother was on their computer, and all of a sudden he says, "Hey, guys, come check this out." He was on a chat room, and the room is being flooded by someone posting messages. These messages were saying things like, "Don't believe what the news tells you tomorrow. They're going to blow up the towers and blame it on planes. The Israeli secret intelligence has warned everyone not to go to work. Don't believe the news. It's all lies," over and over. They even posted links to other chat sites, and sure enough, the same messages were flooding those message rooms too. Weird, eh? Well, we went back to rolling joints and watching The Undertaker get taken down by Booker T. Ominous undertones for sure. Anyways, the next morning on the way to work, like everyone else, I heard the news on the radio. And honestly, I couldn't drive fast enough to get through all the traffic and get to my desk so that I could try to find out what was going on. I'm not sure how it affected anyone else, but I felt a rage building up inside of me. That wasn't so much to do with the fact that allegedly innocent people were dying. I mean, that was horrific. But the fact that the story that was being pushed down everyone's throats was so blatantly fabricated. I never believed something this big, buried so deep, hidden from me. Okay, so I realize that this is asking people to rewind their mental clocks something like 18 years, but I'm sure that there are who can remember some of these talking points. No plane wreckage at any of the crash sites, planes dissolving into the sides of towers and pentagons, tons of witness reports of bombs going off, Tower 7. Oh, but wait, they found the passports of one of the terrorists, not burned or damaged. It simply floated down into the street like a calling card of the Joker. Not enough ridicule? How about the cell phone calls made from Flight 93 that went down into a field in Pennsylvania when allegedly a number of brave American heroes on board managed to overcome the box-cutting terrorists, but alas, to no avail because a trigger-happy VP ordered the Air Force to shoot it down anyways? Hey, here's a question. Who has successfully made a phone call from an airplane traveling 500 miles per hour at 10,000 feet in the sky? Call in right now. You've won a free lifetime supply of pink Kool-Aid. How come the stars haven't ever once changed? How come the truth is so bloody strange? How come my freedoms are all prearranged? Anyways, throughout the day, the stories just kept getting bigger and dumber, and the next thing we knew, we were all being hoodwinked into accepting a draconian state of almost perpetual martial law, all in the name of safety and security. The majority of the sheeple had no idea what was coming, but there was still a pretty big number of conspiracy theorists, aka hackers and gamers, that feared the worst. So I and a couple of other guys at my work started to download videos and audio clips from the news and online sources. A real telling sign of what was about to come down the pipe was when we were back at my buddy's house. This time, I think it was for Thursday Night SmackDown. And we tried to bring up some of the chat sites where we had seen those warning messages about the attacks, and the sites were gone. Actually, the entire domains were gone. My buddy started freaking out because he figured that they had his IP address. So he formatted his computer, deleted all the pirated software and videos he had. Anyways, things started getting a little bit weirder as the world got deeper in bed with Big Brother and the new war on terror. The servers at my work were getting absolutely hammered with way more traffic than what we could tell was from people watching the videos that we were hosting. We were being DOSed for sure. So I copied over as much of the content as I could to as many blank disks that I had so that they could be duplicated on my own server with a crappy little website to let people download them. Remember, this was before the age of streaming, so you can imagine how frustrating it was when your connection cut out and you had to restart your transfer. Anyway, so I think I did the copy on a Friday. Monday, there was no work. And then when I got into the office on Tuesday, there was security tape across the doors. Everything was locked, and there were letters taped to the doors. And under some type of emergency measures overruling the normal scope of jurisdictional law, USA federal agencies working in conjunction with the Canadian government had just shut my place of work down. Unreal. So when one of my managers showed up shortly after, he opened the doors and we went in to find the $100,000 Solera server was gone, along with a number of our workstations missing. Within an hour, we got the call from the head boss, our company's primary investor, who allegedly had millions of dollars in a number of offshore accounts, was one of the victims of the immediate freeze of all of the suspicious offshore accounts that happened right after 9/11. So that was that. Company assets, intellectual property, and cash had all been seized literally overnight. Do I wonder to this day if because of what I did with my coworkers by downloading all of those news clips and videos from people on the street in New York and trying to get the truth out there about what was really happening, is largely or at all in part to blame for targeting of the company I worked for? Well, sometimes I wonder.
How come my dream touching walls of the sky keeps us enclosed in cold white lies?
Anyways, that's when I started to notice weird stuff happening at my parents' house. My server had started rebooting, the internet was cutting out consistently, and there was an audible pause and click every time I picked up the house phone. When I talked to my buddy about it later that evening, he told me to just delete everything. His brother had found some other sites that were trying to expose what was going on with the massive amount of censorship on the internet. And there were even reports of eyewitnesses disappearing who had reported really different stories from what the mainstream was pumping out. And there were even some very random and suspicious deaths right after the event. Yeah, I mean, I can clearly remember that night. I just decided that I was going to go home and shut down my server and move everything into a cold storage. But I didn't need to. When I got home, my dad was in the basement, and he told me that the computer had started to make a loud whirring noise, that it almost started shaking, at which point it just stopped and smelled like something plastic had burned. The hard drive had spun so fast it fried. Sounds like something from a movie, but that's how it all went down. And everything that they've played on the news has been a movie. I mean, they blamed the attacks on bin Laden. They pointed their finger at Afghanistan, promptly began to bomb that country into the Stone Age, and still are, 18 years later. So, I mean, of course, the whole plan wasn't just for Afghanistan, but back to Iraq, Egypt, Libya, East Africa, Syria, Ukraine, all the meanwhile surrounding Iran and setting the world stage for where we are today. For years, I can remember screaming bloody murder to anyone and everyone, and all I got back were blank stares. People calling me crazy, a conspiracy nut. Even my own family disregarding anything I said because of their collective level of cognitive dissonance. Yeah, things started to change in 2005. I noticed people starting to wake up after the Christmas tsunami in Southeast Asia, and then definitely people began to wake up in 2008 after the financial collapse. But people are often and easily led astray. And since then, it's just been one bullshit story after another, each one grander than the last, just to keep people completely desensitized and utterly confused. Mass shootings, weapons of mass destruction, terror, mass media, massive pandemonium over outbreaks of anthrax, Ebola, measles, mumps, anything and everything they want to sell you. Get your shots, take your pills. Damn, they're still digging. Better legalize weed already and get them to chill. The world's going nuts. Climate change is killing the planet. Let's build a bunch of spaceships and get to Mars before it all burns. It's idiocy, total lunacy. And the majority of people addicted to their screens have bought this whole deception. Hook, line, and sinker. So that's where I'm at. I mean, of course, there's a lot more to me and why I'm here today, but essentially that was the beginning of my roadmap to exposing the truth and standing for nothing less than the truth. I'm here today to open a channel with the world to encourage free speech, free thought, open minds, and open hearts. Does this mean that it's all going to be peaches and cream? No, this ain't a fake reality show. This is real life. I want it to get messy, loud, and even a bit uncomfortable. If you're not stepping out of your comfort zone on a daily basis, you're not growing as an individual. The only way to get forward is to keep pushing, especially when it gets hard. So this is another push.
I once believed the facts were backed, proven in science, not forced in compliance.
So let's talk about the show and what it's all about. Well, obviously the name says a lot. The Everything Question Talk Show. Why question everything? Well, because if you're not questioning everything, then you're not learning anything. Simply repeating things that you've been told is not learning. That's just indoctrination and repetition. Memorization. That's what school is. Memorize these facts and we'll give you a degree. That indoctrination is the whole foundation of the entire education system, from diapers to diplomas. The masses are trained in a monkey see, monkey do, don't color outside the lines mentality. Nowadays, when kids start to exhibit behaviors that go against the grain of what we've been told is normal, those kids are being labeled with diagnoses like autism and ADHD. The solution? Feed them pills and stick them with needles. So Come on, this idea is nothing new. Question everything and demand proof. Science, by definition, is something that is testable, provable, and reproducible. By that understanding, there is no room for theoretical pseudoscience that goes against the laws of nature and our observable realities. So question everything and don't be afraid to rock the boat. Don't be afraid to color outside of the lines, because the entire world is a stage and we are the players. Get into character, your character, and start thinking for yourself. If you don't understand how something works, ask questions. Don't just accept someone else's answer, but instead form your own opinions, your own observations, and arrive at your own conclusions. I mean, of course, we always need to be open to new ideas, ready to change our positions on any issues when presented with new information that may either disprove or challenge an earlier assumption or conclusion. Don't be afraid to be wrong, but do fear becoming just another puppet, repeating the same old story without thinking for yourself.
How badly their books have misled us all, spun like tops dancing on a ball.
So the idea of creating the show comes from watching and listening to scores of other truth seekers that are doing the same thing. There are so many amazing people who contribute countless hours of their lives to compiling and sharing content with the world for free, simply to try and get everyone else to open their minds and start thinking for themselves. We are not here to try and convince you or anyone else of what to think. We just want you to think. All that I really want is to help open up the eyes, minds, and hearts of those that are still closed, and encourage everyone to start thinking and talking about some of the more controversial topics in the world. With that being said, it doesn't always have to be so serious, because really, who wants to listen to or watch a group of people argue about anything? So one of the rules about the show is to have fun. It doesn't matter what you or anyone else wants to believe in, but the only stipulation is that everyone is kind to each other. No spewing of hate, judgment, or negative comments that are not constructive, at least. We need to be accepting of all beliefs, even non-beliefs. So that's the general rule. When we're all kind, truly kind, it's a lot easier to have fun. And the lubrication for that fun? Usually tequila. Tonight, it's a little bit of Fireball. So, cheers to that. Another really important thing that I wanted to bring to the show was music and art. I absolutely love listening to music, and I love all the arts. So I thought it would be a really great idea to not only play an occasional song, but it would also be really great to have guest musicians come on the show and play some live music and hopefully get engaged in some riveting conversation. As for the art, same thing. I would really like to get local artists to showcase their art on my show. And hopefully in some cases, having the artist on the show as well, giving us a more personal background as to where the art is coming from. Free thinking and free loving individuals defining their perspective of the world through a freedom of expression. What better way to do that in such timeless things like songs, poems, or paintings? Of course, that's just a very small slice of the overall pie, but I think you get the idea.
How come I want to know when it began? Is time just a line or a loop on rewind? Questions unanswered, let lies propagate. Makes truth sound crazy that we've all learned to hate.
Honestly, I think that our parents were supposed to figure all this stuff out way back in the 50s and 60s, especially during the Flower Power Revolution. But unfortunately, Disney and NASA teamed up with Fox and Hollywood, and we've been stuck in a draconian state of false reality that's fueled by fake wars, fake space, fake terror, fake ideologies that have just taken us away from what it really and truly means to be a human. So instead of the infighting and arguing about what was versus what is, or what could have happened versus what did, let's just move forward with a new mantra. Question everything. It doesn't mean that we're guaranteed to find acceptable answers for anything, but simply the act of asking the question is enough to put our minds to thinking for themselves. And when we put our minds together, well, who knows? We might actually be able to realize more truths than lies.
Damned if I don't, but damn if I do. Look how far would you dare to go? Wait